Well, it's World War III we're looking at, and the Grim Reaper, North Korea, final World War, Third World War, and to end all wars. Crazy. We're looking at nuclear war, possible, happening. The end of the world. What I'm saying is, 376 years again. Now I was looking into further histories about it. The reason why is not Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan was in 1227, he died. They reckon 40 million died. Well, let me just say that Genghis Khan was not the prophecy of Revelation chapter 9 when it says he spat out fire, brimstone and smoke. It's true that they did have at that time bombs, if you like, rockets. They had the gunpowder. It's true that they had the ability to make war spitting out fire, brimstone and smoke. But the key to what Revelation tells us is that there was wings. Now there were no wings on these particular fighting machines. Nothing with Genghis Khan. So we cannot include that. We rule it out. Even though they reckon 40 million died. Now the thing is, he was a king of the East, but there was no wings. See, it says in Revelation chapter 9 that it had the face of a man in it. And this particular, if you like, was for 5 months, which is 150 days or 150 years. And the aeroplanes have been going up now, dropping bombs, spitting out fire, brimstone and smoke for 103 years. So let's look into the possibility then that it was some other history. Now, I've concluded that the time of the preparation of these fighting machines was the 376 days, which is a time, okay, where it talks about a day, a month, a year, an hour, okay. That being the case, we have to look at the possibility that it goes from the time of Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell. Why would Oliver Cromwell be that time? Well, it's the preparation word. Time for spitting out fire, brimstone and smoke. It was established at that time. And it's the establishment, which is what I'm looking at, the preparation. Now, his battle was, as I said before, in 1643 to 1646. If you add the 376 years, remember a day is always a prophetical year. You get that from Ezekiel 4 verse 6. Then, if you look at that, we're talking about the end of the World War in 2019, 2022. Now, I tried to find out and research again, and I'm doing research into all these different scenarios. If we did take it from 1543, it takes up right up to the time of the First World War. And I ruled out that 376 years. Again, there's no wings involved. Now, the thing is, with the time from Cromwell, there's wings involved in the time scenario, okay? Because we took it from his time to now. And the wings have been flying, airplanes have been flying with the face of a man, it's spitting out fire, brimstone and smoke. It's been happening for the last 103 years. They've been doing it with airplanes. The time is 150 years for the flying locust. So, what do? Take another time, shall we? What about the Battle of Boyne? 1690. How many people died at the Battle of Boyne? The Irish War. Well, I worked out that the Irish War at the Battle of Boyne, from my reading, 7,000 died. Now, there was also Londonderry, the siege of it. There, 4,000 died. In total, you've got 11,000 there, calculation of deaths. It's just a minute fraction compared to Oliver Cromwell, when 85,000 died, and then they reckon 200,000 died because of subsequent diseases from the wars, injuries and deaths from that, and in total they summed up to 200,000. But the thing is, what I'm trying to teach here is that the Battle of the Boyne, if you did the calculation of 376, it would take you up to the end of the world time of the 150 years. Sure. What happened in that war? It'd take us up to around about the date of the 150 years from the First World War. 150 years is 150 days, 150 years, 5 months. Now, this being the case, that the aeroplanes which have been flying, remember the key word is wings. If that's the case, then we look at the time from 1690, we're talking about 376 on top of that. It'll take us up to like 2064. Now, I calculated that if we saw the star, the red supernova appearing, say 2022, and you add 30 years, 2052. Now Jesus appeared when the first star came at Bethlehem. 30 years later he appeared after that star. So that gives us the 30 years, but it doesn't take us up to the 64, does it? Now if it turns out that the Bible tells us that this 376 years is precise, if we took it from the Battle of Boyne. Now, there is some reasoning behind the Battle of Boyne, because William of Orange was Protestant, and the Roman Catholic army was a political army, remember, and it was a tyrant trying to force its burnings at the stake. Remember, that's how they worked. They burned the Protestant martyrs at the stake. It was an evil thing. Now, to call somebody a heretic who didn't believe the Bible, to burn him at the stake, monstrous. And anyway, they weren't having any of that. The Protestants in this country, and Cromwell and all the Puritans and all them types, all got together and they said, we're banning this Roman Catholic army. So anyway, James fought against William and lost, and he dashed back off to his own country, back to France where he came from, and his Roman Catholic ideas didn't take shape. So we had then a Protestant, and he stayed the Protestant. Yeah, take your bike off the road now. Bring it over here, Angela. Stop being naughty. Take it off the road. So the idea of Prince William of Orange and all that, there's some good truth behind it, because if you've got the likes of 2,000 and 7,000 of those, there's a lot of people died in those wars, right? But the argument is, okay, is that there it was like a clash between the true Christians and the false. The true Protestants who wanted freedom from tyranny, from religion, which was a political power, and it attacked a person's freedom of conscience and that, based on the Bible. And to have anything that's attacking the Christian faith. Now, Martin Luther said, "Here I stand, I can do none else," you know, and he says that his conscience was based on the Word of God, the Bible. Okay, so if that's the case, we have to remember that the truth of God, okay, states that we have to have freedom, and the Protestants knew that that's what we needed: freedom from a tyrannical power. Giant Pope and giant pagan. We're told in the Bible that we need this freedom, because where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty, and the truth shall make you free, and that's what we were after. And the Protestant Reformation spread throughout Europe. After the 1260 days, or 1260 years, that's what happened. The Bible spread throughout all of Europe and then throughout the world. So we're talking about something in the Bible where it talks about 1260 days or years, I believe. Okay, time times in half a time. That is the time when two prophets in the street, yeah, I see that as the Old and New Testaments, and they were kept in Latin. Now, we've looked at that before. Now what I'm saying is, this Battle of Boyne, there's something in there, because remember, the Gog and Magog battle at the end of the world was between says that the false prophet and they've been doing chopping off Christian heads recently, Revelation 20 verse 4, and it talks about the chopping off the heads, and surrounding the Christian church, the saints it talks about. Nobody else, it's not the Jewish people as we know, it's the saints, the Christian church. And it says that the Gog and Magog on the four corners of the earth would attack the Christians. So if we're looking at the Gog and Magog scenario, then we're talking about the idea of the true Christians and the false. And we're talking about Jerusalem being the New Jerusalem, which comes down from God, I believe is the true Christian church, and the saints which are attached to that. Right, we've looked at that. Now I believe that the Jewish New Testament idea of Jerusalem being attacked and all that is also included in it, because it does say from Ezekiel chapter 38 that the literal Jerusalem was attacked. Now, and fire and brimstone and smoke and all that pestilence goes against him. And Gog and Magog is, of course, either from Turkey or from southern Russia. And the idea that that's where communism came from, and that with a false prophet, you know, attacks the Christian faith all over the world. We've seen what's been happening, the persecution of Christians everywhere. Now, if we're looking at such things, how does the Battle of Boyne fit into that? Well, I said true and false religions fighting at that time. Now, everybody, all they'll complain about, oh, terrible things happened, you know. Of course, all wars are evil, all horrible things come from it. But it wasn't about religion. We've got to remember, that was a war about freedom under your conscience to exercise your belief, but it wasn't about faith necessarily. It was about a war of politics, political war. It was not just ideologies, okay? You can have a war over religion, over unbelief. Atheism's had a lot of wars. It's about the idea of a state. Now that's why I think if a state goes against freedom of Christian conscience, that's what I've been looking at with the idea of the taking a state war from Cromwell when 85,000 were dead. And I looked at the skirmish which came up from 1543 out in the Mediterranean with the Pope and against, you know, the Ottoman, and only 400 died. So we can't include those, and there was no wings attached. There was no wings in it. So you can't take any of those as predictions of the time. And you can't take Genghis Khan, because there's no wings involved. Even if 40 million did die with the war which went on, the Mongolia and all that. So if we look at the scenario of, okay, the time of preparation from 1643 to the time, it takes us up to 2019. And that looks like the most likely scenario of all of them. So we need to be ready. 200 million were involved in the deaths in the wars, and 129 million have already died since the First World War. That's over 103 years, if you include all the wars. Now, that being the case, there's a shortfall of 71 million. Is that going to happen now with World War III, with North Korea? And if it does happen, you won't finish them off in a day. There's no such thing as destroying them all, you know, with a huge fire and fury storm. You can't just go dropping nuclear bombs on anybody, okay? Trouble is, that war could go on to the end of the world. It could last for decades. With so many indoctrinated. They've got one-way radios, goes right into everybody's home in North Korea, completely brainwashed. Like the Nazis. Remember how long it took to get the Nazi ideology out of the young men? It took them a long time, showing them videos and pictures and movies, how they killed 6 million of the Jews and that. Now, that being the case, 6 million Jews were killed. How come many died? I won't go into all the numbers, how many died, okay? Anyway, the thing is, if you got the likes of this end time battle, okay, we need to see that we need to make sure that if we live near those places, be ready to move. If you're in South Korea, for instance, be ready to move away from the reach of their big guns. So we're talking about, we need to remember what Jesus said when Jerusalem was surrounded. He said, flee to the rocks and to the mountains. He said to escape. And the New Jerusalem, the Christian church, the saints, if they are surrounded, be ready to move if you see that you're within range of their guns. And we need to watch the signs closely between 2019 and 2022. So accept Jesus Christ as your God and Saviour, and make sure that He's your lawyer, because in the great white throne judgment seat says the books were opened, and whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. You don't want to be going there. When those pearly gates are opened, you want to have a free entry, and Jesus Christ gives you the robe of righteousness to get in there, so that we are accounted righteous because we're justified. Why? Because Jesus died on the cross in our place, and if we love and believe in Jesus, we get eternal life. It's so simple to believe. Don't follow after this evil called evolution. Okay, there's no transitional fossils. You flap your hands for 1,000,000 years on top of a mountain, you stay a man. You may have strong arms, you won't change into a monkey, okay? Now, don't follow after the lies which will take you away from faith. It's a simple faith. It's easy to get. Jesus never lost a case whoever called on Him. So I say, reject the nonsense and the lies. Believe on Jesus and you shall be saved. Even with this end time war looming over us. And the Bible talks about things like eyes dissolving in their sockets, tongues dissolving in their mouths, Zechariah 12 and that. And it also talks about that the Jews would be like God going out to battle. And with an atomic bomb you've got that. And it says even the feeble would be like David. The young and the old, feeble ones, they'll be like David. Yeah, with machine guns they're like that. And if you look at the likes of the other atomic things the Bible talks about, there shall be fearful sights. That's an atomic bomb for you. Jesus said, wonders in the heaven above and that. And it talks about the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Peter chapter 3, 2 Peter chapter 3. And the works which are therein were burned up. Seeing these things shall be dissolved. See, we're talking about apocalyptic language, talking about dissolving and everything. Now that could come from God when Jesus comes back to the earth and we go to the new heaven and earth, and God makes a new earth. I'm looking forward to eating nice food with my new spiritual body in heaven. and you know, we're getting close to that. But I certainly don't want to see death and destruction on the earth if we could avoid it. If there's 71 million, we could avoid getting killed in a third world war. I mean, that'd be wonderful. But we need to be ready for the signs of these things. Trouble is, like I said, if that North Korean army with the ideology, it gets to go into the world with their tanks and everything. Look how long it took to dislodge ISIS, you know. We're still working at it now after all these years. So we don't want that scenario happening. And there is a Bible passage which says there at the end of chapter 9, Revelation, neither repented they of their fornications, nor of their murders, nor of their thefts, nor of their, you know, what was it, witchcraft. The thing is, it also says before that, and they should not blaspheme God, and they shouldn't be worshipping idols made of gold, silver, bronze, etc. The thing is, when you don't worship the God of heaven and earth, who made heaven and earth, you end up becoming materialistic only, and that's when the 666 goes into the head, I believe, and the mark of the beast and the sign and the number of his name. Because although I think 6 is like the mark of a man, where he's striving for perfection, not in holiness and godliness, but in material things. Because it says they made idols out of these things. That's all they had, that's all they lived for, that's all they worshipped. The thing is, if that's the case, if that's all they want, perfection in that, and they leave the good things of the Bible, loving your neighbours yourself, looking after the widow and the poor and the orphans, if they neglect all that and they just follow after these things, that's the wickedness. Now, when it says in my Bible, you know, to share out, if you have of this world's goods and you do not give to your neighbour in need, or your brother in need, if you like, how does the love of God dwell in you? Exactly. Now, if we look at the scenario with the false hypocrite church and the false hypocrites, they're the ones who persecute. They're the ones who go out and they steal the widow's money. They throw them on the street. They make them homeless. That is the false church. We talk about it in Matthew chapter 14. Matthew chapter 23 and verse 14. Let's get it right. It says they threw the widows on the street. For long pretense they made praise.